Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale. With me this week is Sheila Wood. Sheila is running for council in Ashburnham Ward in the October municipal election, and today we're going to be talking about various topics, including the relationship between the municipal and provincial governments and what happens when they're not on the same page.
And you cannot let your provincial or your federal counterparts off the hook. I mean, it's like housing, it's like green waste contracts. You've got to lobby them. I mean, if we have a new MPP here, right? I mean, it's in the interest of the new MPP to work with the municipality to make sure that his constituents are happy. And if they're not happy, they're going to let that person know.
And we're also going to be talking about environmentalism here in Peterborough and future development. So, hope you enjoy the show.
Well, hi Taylor, it's very nice to be here today. I'm Sheila Wood and I'm running for councillor in the Ashburnham Ward. And you're probably going to ask me why, right?
I mean, it is an item that's on my list. Why?
It is on your list. Very good. So the reason being, first of all, and number one reason, is that municipal elections, and I have run provincial and I have run municipal before, but this municipal election is very important to the community because more than ever, the community's voice is needed on council to go forward with sustainable initiatives, not just for this next 4 years, but for this next 10 years or 20 years. Maybe I won't be here, but at least I feel this for my children and my grandchildren. And that's one of the main reasons, because I think it is such an important election.
So why is this election more important than others? Why is the community's voice needed now more than previously?
Well, if you've followed the last 4 years in our community, now there's some great things that have been done and great initiatives and so on and so forth, and there's been development and people like that. But for me, the reason it really is most important, we've had very divisive community engagement. And I think that's the only way I can put it. Like you have one side against the other side. And that's not how a council and a community should be. We should all be working together for the betterment of our community.
Okay. Now, if you have, our city council has 11 people on it. Mm-hmm. Naturally, there is going to be some disagreement because there are different people on different ends of the political spectrum.
Sure.
Some come from a community service background, some come from a business background, some come from, all different kinds of backgrounds. So why is it... Shouldn't there be some division on council?
Well, there should also be definitely discussion, definitely dialogue. It's not always great to be always agreeing with each other, but for me, it's the communication of the council. It's communication, it's consultation, and it's collaboration with the stakeholders. And I haven't felt that. Like, if you haven't seen your counselor in 4 years, hasn't come to your door, then I think it's time for a change. You need to have that kind of back and forth communication.
So for you, council hasn't been communicating with each other. They haven't been communicating with their constituents.
No, and that's really big for me. It's communication, it's consultation, and it's collaboration. I mean, that's why the community needs to have people on council that will go forward. If I'm elected, I would have 4 town ward meetings. I will do a quarterly newsletter for my constituents, because not everyone, Taylor, and as you know, you're in the journalism business, not everyone's online, not everyone has a smartphone, and not everyone, still reads the paper, because it's different, right? Mm-hmm. So if there's big issues or issues that are coming forward, I want to make sure my constituents have all the information that they need to have at their fingertips.
Okay.
Because, that's why I say my voice is their voice, and that's very important.
So having town hall meetings, something that I've noticed is that with town hall meetings that have been had for individual wards, Dean Pappas tried to get some town hall meetings off the ground for council this term, but the turnout to them was, in my opinion, pretty low. So how do you go about having those public engagement sessions and actually get people who want to come out and provide feedback who, more than just the same few people who come out to all of those types of things?
Well, what you have to do when you have to think about this is that when you're elected, I mean, you will have public meetings that the city will put on for the big issues, like there was for PDI, and I spoke against PDI at Market Hall. There was for the Parkway, right? So the big issues are there, but it's the little things, like if you're having a new development go in, as we are in Ashburnham, on Ashborough Village. They had a meeting with the developers. I went to that. There was quite a good turnout, but it's the timing of that meeting. It's in the summer. So going back to that question, how do you get those people engaged on this, right? Well, what you have to do is you have to make that happen. You have to do it for your constituents. You can't always say, excuse me, I'm going to have City Hall set this up. You might have to put up on your dime, rent a place, and say, I'm having a meeting. I would like you to come. I want to hear what you have to say.
Is it on councillors to put their own personal finances into holding public meetings, though? Or?
Well, I don't know if it is or not, but I would just call it almost like a meet and greet type of thing, or here's the issue. I'm going to be at this place, right? Come and talk to me.
Okay. And what happens if, you read the staff reports, you get the recommendations from city staff, and they say, we think this option A is a great idea. It makes financial sense. Here's the numbers that explain why. And then you go to a public meeting and you have a few dozen people from your ward come out and they say, we don't think option A is the best thing. We prefer option B. What do you do then?
Well, like anything, when you're dealing with people, and I've dealt with a lot of people and businesses for many years in the downtown, when I was general manager for 11 and a half years, there's always going to be some people who will always say, I like it, and there's always going to be some who say, I don't. And what can you do? I mean, but the point is, if you're elected by your constituents, and you say to them, I'm bringing your concerns to council, then you've got to carry through with that. And a huge issue, and I know we're going to talk about it more, was PDI. I mean, the city, the community did not want that sold. And unfortunately, it has been, right? And Hydro One, Hydro has been sold off by the province. And I met this man at the door the other day, and he said, well, who are you going to call, Sheila? Right, and I thought, just like the Ghostbusters movie, right? Who are you going to call? Because we don't know all the details of that, right? But you have to. But I believe you have to let those voices be heard, and you look for a consensus. You always look for a consensus. I know many years ago when I ran first in municipal election and against and Sylvia Sutherland was running for the mayor. And she was a great consensus builder, and I like that, and that's how I see it too.
Okay. I don't mean to jump around because we have touched on a few issues and, the Ashborough Village and PDI. We're going to dive into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But something I do want to explore while we're still in the first half is to talk a little bit more about you. You said you had 11 years experience as a GM.
Yes.
And why don't you give us a little bit of your background, especially the stuff that you believe makes you qualified to be running for council?
Okay, well, we don't have enough time, but I have a varied background, right?
All right, keep it to...
By coming to Peterborough, I began my career with the Peterborough BIA downtown. I was the office manager, and Sylvia Sutherland was my boss.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah, so she's a mentor, right? I learned a lot from Sylvia. And so when she left, I took over as general manager. So I was the general manager for the downtown BIA for 11 and a half years, which at the time when I left to go to the Yonge Street BIA in Toronto on a contract, was the third longest in Ontario. And what I learned because of the business community and working with the business community and working also with the public is that you have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to listen. It's very important to listen because sometimes it's not the issue. It's not about the parking here or the street light or whatever what may come up. It is about listening and letting someone say, this is how I feel. And I think that's my strongest element because I don't mind listening and I let it come to me, but I let it roll over my shoulders.
Okay. So I don't mean to dive too much into Sylvia Sutherland, but so you were a protege of hers, and then...
I sort of see myself that way. I don't know if she would see that, but she I mean, it's not like we're like she was my boss, but what I learned from Sylvia was you have to listen to people. You have to take the whole issues in, not just, you can't be centered on one little thing. You can't be just, well, this is what I want.
And did you end up going up against her in an election, or?
Yes, it was in the 90s, yes.
Oh, okay.
I lost.
Well, that's an interesting relationship then.
It is,
But, so...
But I did learn, you've got to listen, and you've got to try and build consensus. That's very important on a council. Even yes, you can disagree, but you have to try and build that consensus.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off when you were talking about your personal experience.
Oh, yeah, no, I can go back. So I was with the general manager of the downtown BIA. I think I closed off almost every street in the downtown. I brought the Jazz Festival to the downtown, Jazz Restaurant Tour, Street Fest, the downtown market. The BIA was instrumental in that Wednesday market. And how that happened, Taylor, was that I went to conferences and I took from other cities, right? So it was a gentle, you're coming this way, right? And I took that research and I brought it back to my board of directors and to the community and to the city council, and we implemented a lot of those ideas. And I think there again, it's about communication, collaboration, stakeholders, and if I am elected to council, which I hope I am, I would definitely be going to AMO, which is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. They just wrapped up this last weekend 1,900 delegates from all over Ontario. So to me, to have been there, and I don't know if anyone went from City Council, but to learn best practices. How do you deal with these issues? How do you deal with affordable housing? How do you deal with transportation?
And there's so many issues that, not just we're facing, but other municipalities are facing as well. The amalgamation of utilities, lands, dealing with the opioid crisis. There's so many other municipalities, the housing crisis especially, because everyone in the Golden Horseshoe is dealing with that.
Exactly. So that's something I would do on a regular basis and bring a report back to my constituents, to the community, and to city staff.
Okay. So, once if you do get elected in, how do you apply all that knowledge? Because it's so easy to be like, okay, I want to plan this, this, and this, and this. But then when you find, just how under time constraints the council is, and, just how much the workload is, sometimes I find that, people have these grand ambitions for before they get elected to council, or I'm going to plan with all these meetings and I'm going to do all this. And then they get in and they're like, oh, I don't have time or the budget to do all that.
Well, I'm fortunate. I'm retired from my own little marketing business. I do have the time and the energy to do that. And you never do anything alone. That's the other thing I've learned. So you involve your community to help you. Right, so in Ashburnham, for instance, what started off as a small little idea with a pumpkin walk has become a huge event for us. Right, and last night was movie night on the street, and that's not. It's generated by the Village BIA, but at the same time, it's a whole community of people that work on that and want to see that. My view of campaigning right now, and people say, well, what's the biggest issue at the door, Sheila? What are you hearing? Or and you probably asked me the same thing. What am I
that
hearing?
was my next question.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go. How do you like being interviewed there?
Well then.
But no, what I hear at the door is about communication. I want more information, right? And then, of course, the next big issue is transportation, and that's big. And of course, the issues that we've just gone through in the last 4 years, they're there. I mean, they're still hot topic buttons. Let's put it that way.
So when it comes to, let's talk about one of those hot button issues. Okay. Let's talk about transportation.
Sure.
Because... especially if this new subdivision does get built, and we'll talk about that again a bit later, you're kind of in an interesting transportation situation. Dilemma is a word for it, because there's not.
A dilemma.
to cross the Trent Severn Waterway, there are kind of limited access routes. Some of them are swing bridges, some of them are one-lane bridges,
Yeah.
some of them are the tunnel through the lift locks, which is only one lane. So how do you create that access route for all those people in, existing subdivisions? There's already one that's under construction on Paul Rex Boulevard.
That's right.
So how do you get people in and out of there?
Well, that is the dilemma, and that's why this evening at council there is going to be a meeting about the whole development and transportation. And how I understand it is they're going to widen Television Road. They're going to make Manice Road an like a crossroad coming through, so it connects from Television Road to Ashburnham,
Okay.
right? So they're going to widen that. When I went to the open public meeting, and let me just say, be clear, okay? For years and years, the East End has always been left out on development. Like years ago, when I was with the downtown, I went through so many reviews of the official plan. The different nodes, right? We're going to do the North End, we're going to do the South End, we're going to do the West End, and we're going to do the East End. And so we've sort of been left not as much with the development. Everything has sort of gone south or west.
Mm-hmm.
So development is good, and it's good for the community, and it's good because we're going to have the 407 coming in. But when I went to this meeting, I didn't feel that they had done enough homework on this issue. And it's like having, when you're in school, if you don't do your homework, you can't answer the questions. And there were a lot of questions at that meeting that could not be answered. Like Orca wasn't there. A hydrologist for water flow, etc., wasn't there. And it is a wetlands, so we need to talk about that.
And was transportation dealt with at all as one of those questions?
They went through the the maps and stuff and said this road would be this way and this road would be this way, but not in detail. And I believe the meeting tonight at City Hall is going to deal more with that. So I expect that will be a hot topic.
Now,
Forward.
just for our listeners, it might be a little while after the meeting that this
Okay.
episode goes
So
up.
we'll just say,
on August, what's the date today?
well, it's August 27th.
August 27th.
So
there we
August
go.
27th, a transportation meeting for the new development will have been done.
Okay. I think that about wraps up all the things I want to discuss in the first half.
Okay.
So we're going to take a short break, refill on water.
Right.
And we'll come back really quickly and talk about some issues.
Thank you, Taylor.
All right. So we're back on the Peter Podcast, and let's talk about a few issues, especially, we've talked a little bit about here and there, the Ashborough Village subdivision, but let's dive into it. Do you think it's a good idea to build this subdivision out by the lift lock at what is currently the golf course that's there?
At the moment, no. And I'll say it, the reason I say this, okay, is that, like I said before, they haven't done their homework on this. Like we do need new development in East City, and it's coming because the 407 is coming, and everyone knows that, right? But right now, no, there's not enough information, that the people need. That I don't know. Is it going to be any affordable housing? Is it going to be mixed residential? Is it going to help pay for the services that the people who have lived there don't have, but the other new tenants are going to have? There's a lot of questions that are unanswered. So right at the moment, no.
Okay. So you're not opposed necessarily to having more subdivisions or even just more development happening in Ashburnham Ward. It's just those questions need to be answered
because
first.
In Ashburnham, we have clean tech going in. We're going to have the canoe museum. I went to a meeting with Trent University, and I had no idea how much of this development up there is going to make an impact on our community. And again, that's north, right? So no, I think development is to some people it's something that they say, well, we can't change. We don't want to change, and of course we don't want to change, but we don't need to change who we are. We just have to have that communication with the answers.
And you do raise a good point in that we're going to have the Clean Tech Commons under construction soon. I believe the land's already being cleared for that. So that's going to be a huge development that could potentially bring in a lot of jobs. And it's a lot of people who are going to be living here as well.
Yes.
We've also got the 407 extension coming.
Yes.
And there's expected to be a wave of growth that's expected to come alongside that, but only if we're ready.
Yes.
Do you think we're ready?
Not yet. No. Because look at the housing issue at the moment. There's like 1% vacancy rate, like for apartment rentals. Students are having an amazing time trying to find some place to live.
An amazingly bad time.
Amazingly bad time. Sorry about that. Yeah, amazingly bad time, right? And we have seniors that are looking for places. Like I met a gentleman at the door the other day. He's been looking for 6 months to find an apartment. 6 months, and this is it's unheard of, right? It used to be you could just go pick up and go. Change where you wanted to go, right? So no, we're not ready, and we've got to be ready, absolutely, but it has to be planned well. It has to be planned out. I mean, like for all the years with all the official plans, and I'm a big proponent of an official plan. I believe if you have one, you should follow it always. But I know it's a fluid document, and it does change. And so you have to be prepared at times to make that change and to deal with that. But we right now, with the 407 coming in, we're going to have retirees from Toronto, or we're going to have maybe young families who can't afford to buy in Toronto come here and commute. And it's not unheard of to go from Peterborough to Toronto every day to commute, because my husband did it for almost 15 years. Because he was a teacher in Toronto and I worked in Peterborough. So
is there a balance that needs to be struck between, reaching these development goals in time for this oncoming growth versus making sure that development that happens is responsible, but at the risk of we're not going to be ready for that growth? Is there even a chance that we are going to be ready by the time it comes? Because, in a few years...
Well, we are growing, and
yes.
you can't get around it. But the balance has got to be on sustainability, and we've got to think about our climate change. And if that development is on a wetland, and I don't know enough about it because, like I said at that meeting, there was no one there to talk about that in layman's terms. That's what I want to say. There was no one there. Oh yeah, well we're going to have the environmental assessments, etc. done, but how do we know what everything is there? Why does it flood? Why does it flood? Right? So we need those answers. So that's one issue. And the other issue is a balance. If you don't have your infrastructure done first, right? You should have that done first before you put up the buildings. You should know exactly, this road, this way, east, west, north, south, and then you create that development, because that's when you have your infrastructure and your roads.
Now, I'm not a development expert myself, but
me either.
I have sat in on a few planning committee
meetings.
Me too. Yeah. And it's not necessarily a one-layer approval where, okay, here's all the information you need to know about this future development. Yeah. It's approved. You can do whatever you want with it now. There are layers of approval. A detailed design needs to be approved. There are various organizations that need to sign off, including ORCA.
Yes.
There's, as you said, the environmental assessments need to be done. Archaeological assessments need to be done.
Archaeologists, yeah. Water assessment, the hydrologist has to be there.
And I'm sure there are a ton more assessments and organizations that get involved that I don't even know about. So it's not necessarily a one-layer, here you go,
no,
build whatever you want.
It doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure. And we all know that. I mean, you look at the time someone wants to come in and develop something until it happens, right? But still, if you're planning this, and if this is what the goal is going to be because of the 407, then you do want to make sure that it's planned out properly, and you've got every voice that you can have at these meetings to be heard.
Now, and here's a question for you. Should some faith be put into city staff and council that those questions are going to be answered, but they're just not going to be answered right away because they already know the questions? The questions that people are asking at these public meetings are probably some of the questions that people who work at City Hall are coming up with, and these are the questions that would likely be answered throughout that planning process.
Right. Well, I think for me personally, over the years, the city staff was always terrific. If you had a question, they would answer it. You would get the information you need, right? So I don't see a change in that. It's how it's rolled out, right? It's how it's done. I can't explain it to you. A woman said to me at the door, she said, I don't have a problem, Sheila, using tax money for this or for this. She said, but I actually really want to know all the details. And so if it's a question of we need more details and we need it in layman's terms, like the report tonight, have you read it?
I have not yet, no.
You know how many pages it is? 87 pages. No, I didn't read it all either. Right? and how can you? Because it's very technical, right? And all I would like to have seen is like a 2-page report saying, here's the issues, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, sometimes there is a bit of hunting required in those city staff reports.
Exactly.
A lot of use of the Control F keys. Okay. Well, if there wasn't anything else that you want to add about the Ashborough Village subdivision or housing in general.
Much. There's, affordable housing, we know it. But it's not just affordable. It's the affordable is a word that, when I talk to people, it's like, what's affordable here is affordable different in Toronto. So we've got to get on the same page on that. But it's housing for students, it's housing for seniors, it's single parents. There's all of that. And I believe it's it's a right to have food, clothing, and a home.
How do you do that, though? How do you create that environment where those units are developed? Because, Peterborough Housing Corporation does have housing development in the works for housing for seniors, housing for single mothers.
Yes, they do.
But there's only so much PHC can take on at one time.
Exactly.
And how do you, if the goal is to encourage private developers to go in on that, how do you do that? Because there doesn't seem to be the incentives there to get them to do that.
Well, one thing we have to remember is that municipalities are not always responsible for all the housing. It is provincial. And it is federal, and they have policies, and those MPPs and MPs have got to be lobbied on a regular basis. But I just read an article in one of the papers, not yours, sadly, and it was about a program out west, and it's called NATE, and it's the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. So it's similar to what we'd have here at Fleming College. And they have partnered up. Now this is so cool, right? They partnered up with people who are learning trades, who are in affordable housing, with the college, with a developer, to make affordable housing out there. And it was just a short article. I'm going to do some more research on it. But there's an example. If you have stakeholders together at the table, think what you can do. And we have many good people in this community that are working very hard on many of these issues. And it's just not housing, it's food and clothing and everything. But maybe we need to be working more together.
Okay. Now, I don't mean to move off from this topic so quickly because, we can sit here and talk about housing development for an hour. But there are a couple more issues that I feel like we need to talk about before we move on. And one of those is the Parkway. Particularly, not just dealing with transportation in Ashburnham Ward, but transportation across the whole city. Right now, the Parkway looks like it's kind of in limbo right now with several studies right now looking at transportation across the city. But what are your thoughts on improving transportation, and particularly, what are your thoughts on the Parkway?
Well, my thoughts always for the Parkway is that I didn't agree with it. Okay, I'm on record with that, and I've never liked it. But yes, we need new transportation ideas and creativity. And one of them, really, when you think about moving people north, south, east, and west, is about integrated transportation. And that's something like what they have in Toronto with Metrolinx, but it doesn't really work all that well in Toronto, but they're working on it, right? But I'll tell you where it works really well was when I lived in Switzerland for a year, my husband and I. We could catch a bus, then we could go from the bus to the train, and we'd go from the train to a bicycle. We go from a bicycle to a car because it's integrated on this one pass. So, and it works perfectly. Right, in Switzerland, because they're always on time, right? Little joke there, right? But so it's integrated transportation. And buses. I mean, I'm a big believer in public transportation. I don't drive anymore, right? I don't have that. But I mean, I've always caught the bus. And buses are community hubs. You find out everything that's going on in your community, and you meet people, and you talk to people. At least I do, anyway. So I'm not one to sit there and just stare at someone, right? I know everyone's on their smartphones, and I have a smartphone too. But it's a community hub. So I see transportation not just about the Parkway. It's about the East End, where we're dealing with getting through from under the tunnel if the tunnel's not there, or the bridges, and so on and so forth. Okay. And for the West End, well, I know they're looking at a new bus terminal downtown, right? And I think that's a great idea. I really do.
Okay, so you're a fan of a more connected transportation system
Absolutely.
In some way.
Integrated,
and
yes.
You said that you're not a fan of the Parkway. Maybe you can explain why you're not a fan of the Parkway.
Because it goes back so many years, Taylor. We don't have the time, okay? Right? It's like when I was in the 90s.
Are you saying we don't have another 70 years to spend on the Parkway?
Pretty much, right? I think, it's past its time. But not past the fact that, yes, we got to move people north, south, east, west. Right? But I don't even like using the word the Parkway. I don't use it at the door. I say transportation.
I mean, right? That's what it all dives down to. It's part of that issue.
It is. It's part of that issue. And people were so strong on it. And that was a divisive thing in our community. It put people against each other. People wanted the Parkway. People didn't want the Parkway. What people really wanted, I believe, and I'm a dreamer maybe, is that we want a consensus of how to go ahead, that we get something out of it and you get something out of it.
No, it was a divisive issue, but there are people in the community who are divided over this.
Yeah, they still are.
Who have a vision for Peterborough with this north-south corridor that's never been built, and then the people who say no, it's too late for that.
Yeah.
And forgive my interpretation, but you seem to be using the word divisive in a negative sense.
Well, it's hard when you have an issue where your neighbor next door says, I want a Parkway and you don't, right? It's like you can talk about everything, out of the blue, but you come to that one issue, It's like federal, provincial politics. Sometimes that can set people off too, right? So it was divisive.
So you're the one that's campaigning right now, going to door to door. And what's the conversation that takes place when you talk with someone who is very much pro Parkway and you're not?
It hasn't come up, Taylor.
Okay.
It has not come up. No, because I don't begin by saying, I don't like the Parkway. Do you? Right? I talk about transportation. Okay. So for me, it hasn't come up.
Okay. Do you meet a lot of people, though, who are in favor of the construction of the Parkway while you're on the campaign trail?
No one has actually said to me, Sheila, I wouldn't vote for you if you don't support the Parkway. No one has said that.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do they say then?
They say, how are we going to make our community closer, get from point A to point B, and so on and so forth, with all the new development and things that are happening, right? And our buses are late sometimes, not late, but it takes you 45, maybe 50 minutes, right, to get from point A to B, go from Ashburnham to downtown. And that's because we have too many stops, I believe, right? We need to tighten those things up.
Okay. Now, we're going to move on from the transportation conversation right now, because the last topic that I want to talk about before we run out of time is the PDI issue. Now, right now, again with the Parkway, PDI is at this juncture where right now we're waiting for submission to the Ontario Energy Board.
Yes.
For potential approval of that sale of our utility for $105 million.
Yes.
That's $55 million in revenue for the city. Maybe if you want to briefly give your stance on the issue, but I think more importantly right now, because I don't know if there's any coming back from doing the sale, is what we're going to spend the money on.
Well, we don't know if it's going to go through. I mean, we do know that the Energy Board could squash it.
It could.
Right? And like I said earlier, I spoke about it at Market Hall. I did not want to sell a public asset. It's not in my nature. It's not in my makeup of character. Having said that, that money is something that we should be thinking about. But we don't know where it's going to go. And we don't know exactly what is in that contract.
Now, there were some plans for some new generation installations, but those have...
Well, they're gone because of the
yeah.
provincial government has
Yes.
taken that away, right? And going to that green area of money, okay, and what should it be spent on? I'll give you two. Our waste, our green waste, which we should have in this community. We were promised it since 2008. And it's a big thing with me, the styrofoam. Come on, styrofoam. We went from half a bag of garbage to a full bag of garbage because now we can't recycle that styrofoam. So I know people that have said, "This is insane, Sheila." Right? Like we should have that. Other communities have that. So would I like to see it go to sustainable green initiatives? Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, $55 million into sustainable green initiatives.
Well,
getting rid of styrofoam.
It's like, but I think the contract was only about $50,000 or $60,000. I may be wrong on that, but it was minimal compared to other big budget items, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the green waste was going to be going to be with the province, and so on and so forth. And these are huge issues.
Yeah.
Because if we want to be who we want to be in this community, and we want to have a lifestyle, and we see ourselves as being Peterborough out of the ordinary, well, we better be out of the ordinary, and we better have what other communities have.
So, give me a sense if my description of you is off, but you seem to be very, focused on, sustainability.
Yes.
Environmentalism.
Yes.
Active transportation.
Yes.
Making sure that those green projects get off the ground.
Yes. Even though we have a provincial government that doesn't want to do it.
Ding,
right?
ding, ding. In fact,
ding, ding.
That's what I was going to get to. And if we
Yeah.
get more of those types of people on council who are like yourself, who want to promote those types of projects, what do you do then if you have a council who says, we want to do this, this, and this, and the provincial government is saying, we are not going to offer you any help, you're on your own, and those projects become...
Good question,
cost
Taylor.
prohibitive because of that.
It is a good question. So I'm going to answer it by saying, because I do believe this very strongly. Okay, those are important initiatives. They're important to me. They're important, to this community, and you cannot let your provincial or your federal counterparts off the hook. I mean, it's like housing, it's like green waste contracts. You've got to lobby them. I mean, if we have a new MPP here, right? I mean, it's in the interest of the new MPP to work with the municipality to make sure that his constituents are happy, and if they're not happy, they're going to let that person know that they're not happy. And I think lobbying at Queen's Park, I mean, I don't know if people understand, but you can go to Queen's Park. You can get interviews with MPPs.
Oh, it's getting a little bit harder to do that, but I know what you mean.
Well, yes, it is. But it used to be you could get. I mean, but you can do it. You've got to make. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes a bit of research and work. But I would lobby them. Yes.
Okay, Sheila, we've just run out of time, so I just want to leave with you. Is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off?
Well, I do want to say that I hope the people of Ashburnham will give me their vote on October 22nd. I'm positive. I'm creative. I speak my mind. I do it in a way, though, I think that people understand, and it's not in political speak. It's in, to the person. I really believe that, my voice is their voice, and they will hear it if I'm elected to City Council.
All right, Sheila, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you,
program.
Taylor. Thank you so much.
And to everyone else, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.